I'm a wine connoisseur at 59. I've tasted thousands of bottles, but nothing prepared me for what happened that October night in Aurora's botanical gardens. The queen of the night was blooming. This rare cereus flower opens only once a year and only. At midnight, I'd driven across town just to witness it, standing there in the moonlight, watching the enormous white petals unfold like slow-motion fireworks. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years incredible. Isn't it the voice came from behind? May turned to see a woman approaching, maybe 30-some with rich brown hair, catching the garden lights. Her green eyes reflected the same wonder. I felt I've never seen anything like it, I admitted. She moved closer, studying the flower with genuine fascination. The scent is intoxicating, like vanilla and jasmine combined. Jasmine combined, you have a good nose professional hazard. I'm Eden Griffin. The name clicked immediately. Griffin. Vineyard's one of Aurora's most prestigious wineries. Rachel Watson, I replied. I evaluate wines for Hartwell Auction House. Her eyebrows raised with interest. The Rachel Watson, I've read your reviews. And Wine Spectator guilty as charged. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the flower reach full bloom. The garden was nearly empty except for a few other night owl enthusiasts scattered around the greenhouse. You know, Eden said, her voice carrying a hint of something playful. This flower reminds me of a 1985 Bordeaux I opened last week. Complex, mysterious, worth waiting for. I laughed despite myself. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard about wine or the nerdiest thing I've ever heard about flowers. Can it be both? There was something magnetic about her confidence most people half my age treated me with polite difference. Eden spoke to me like an equal, like someone who genuinely interested her. What brings a vineyard owner to a midnight flower viewing? I asked. Same thing that brings a wine expert. I guess appreciation for rare beauty that happens on its own timeline. The way she said it, looking directly at me, sent an unexpected warmth through my chest. I hadn't felt that flutter of attraction in longer than I cared to admit. I should go, I said, though I didn't want to wait. Eden pulled out her phone. Griffin Vineyards is hosting a private tasting next weekend. We're unveiling our reserve collection. Would you consider joining us? Professional curiosity worded with something deeper. I'll think about it. I hope you will. The wines deserve someone with your palate. As I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this midnight encounter had shifted something fundamental. The queen of the night would close by dawn, but whatever had bloomed between Eden and me felt like it was just beginning. 3 days later, the invitation arrived. Cream-colored card stock, elegant script. Griffin Vineyard's letterhead, not an email or phone call, but a proper invitation. I hadn't seen one of those in years. Rachel Watson is cordially invited to an exclusive tasting of the Griffin Reserve Collection Saturday at 3 p.m. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Coffee growing cold in my cup. Professional opportunities like this didn't just fall into your lap. Griffin wines were legendary. Their Reserve Collection rarely shown to outsiders. Any sommelier in the country would kill for this chance, but it wasn't the professional opportunity that made my hands shake slightly as I held the invitation. Saturday arrived crisp and clear. Griffin Vineyard sprawled across rolling hills, 30 minutes outside Aurora, row after row of vines turning amber and gold in the autumn light. The main building was a beautiful stone structure that managed to feel both grand and welcoming. Eden met me at the entrance wearing dark jeans and a cream sweater that made her green eyes pop. You came hard to turn down Griffin Reserve wines. Is that the only reason? The directness of her question caught me off guard. Should there be another? She smiled, leading me inside. Let's start with the wines and see where we go from there. The tasting room was intimate, just the two of us, and a selection of bottles that represented decades of wine making, taking excellence. Eden poured the first glass, a 2015 Cabernet that immediately transported me. Damn, I breathed after the first sip. This is extraordinary. My grandfather planted those vines in 1978. They're just hitting their prime now. We moved through the collection methodically. Eden knew Every bottle story, every vintage's unique character, her passion was infectious, her knowledge impressive, but more than that, she listened when I spoke, really listened, like my opinions mattered to her personally. You're not just the owner, I realized halfway through our tasting. You're the winemaker guilty, took over from my grandfather 5 years ago, these. Wines show incredible restraint for someone your age. Most young winemakers want to make their mark with bold statements, maybe. I prefer subtlety to shouting something in her tone. Made me look up from my glass. She was watching me with an intensity that sent heat up my neck, the 2018 Pinot. I said, quickly reaching for the next bottle, tell me about that one. Eden moved closer to pour, close enough that I caught her scent, something clean and warm with hints of vanilla like the night blooming flower. This one's special, she said, her voice lower. Now harvest was delayed by early rains. We thought the vintage was ruined, but sometimes the best things come from unexpected challenges. Our fingers brushed as she handed me the glass. Neither of us pulled away. Immediately, Tedden, try the wine first. Then we'll talk. The Pinot was revelation. Complex, layered with a finish that seemed to last forever. I closed my eyes, letting it coat my palate, losing myself in the experience. When I opened them, Eden was still watching me. You taste like you make love, she said quietly with complete attention. The glass nearly slipped from my hands. That's quite an assumption. Is it wrong? I should have left then, should have thanked her for the tasting and walked away before things got complicated instead. I found myself leaning closer. The wine is incredible, I said, but I think we both know this isn't really about wine anymore. Eden smiled slow, and knowing no, it's not. The air between us felt charged, electric with possibility. 27 years separated us, a gap that should have felt insurmountable, but sitting there in her family's tasting room, surrounded by wines that told stories of patience and time age, felt like just another variable in a complex equation. Have dinner with me, Eden said, here tonight. Let me cook for you. It wasn't really a question. And we both knew I'd say yes. Those dinners became my Saturday ritual. Every weekend for a month, I'd drive to Griffin Vineyards, telling myself it was purely professional interest. Eden was brilliant after all her insights about terroir and vintage. Variations challenged everything I thought I knew about winemaking, but Saturday evenings weren't about business. Eden would cook simple, perfect meals. Pan-seared salmon with herbs from her garden risotto that paired flawlessly with her 2019 Chardonnay. We'd sit on her patio as autumn deepened, talking until the stars came out. Tell me about your first wine, she said one evening, pouring a 2017 estate blend I'd never tasted before. My first wine, or my first good wine, the one that changed everything. I smiled, remembering. 1982, Margot. I was 25, working my first auction. House job, my boss opened it to celebrate a major sale. I'd never tasted anything so elegant, so alive. It was like discovering I had senses I didn't know existed. Where is that boss now? Dead. Cancer. 10 years ago. He taught me everything. Eden's expression softened. I'm sorry, don't be. He lived exactly how he wanted. Good wine, great food, beautiful women. I paused, realizing what I'd said. He was straight. Obviously, Eden's smile was cryptic. What about you? What about me? What beautiful women? My heart stumbled. We danced around this for weeks, walking right up to the edge without ever stepping over. That's a loaded question. I'm interested in loaded questions. I took a long sip of wine. Buying time. I was married once to a man. It lasted 3 years and felt like 30 because he was wrong for you, because he the admission hung between us like smoke. Eden leaned forward, slightly, her green eyes reflecting the patio lights. When did you know? Really know? Maybe 2 years ago. Maybe always. Maybe sitting here talking to you, Rachel. I'm 59, Eden. I've spent most of my life pretending to be someone I'm not. I don't have time for more pretending. Eden stood, moving closer to my chair. Then don't. When she leaned down to kiss me, I didn't pull away. Her lips were soft, wine sweet, and the kiss tasted like everything I'd been denying myself for decades. When we broke apart, my hands were shaking. This is insane, I whispered. Why? Because you're 32 and gorgeous and could have anyone you want. I want you. You don't know what you're saying. Eden knelt beside my chair, taking my hands and hers I've wanted. You since that night at the botanical gardens, when you laughed at my wine metaphor, when you looked at that flower like it, was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen. I've been thinking about you every day since Eden. I'm old enough to be your mother. You're not my mother. You're the woman who makes my heart race when she walks into a room, the woman who understands wine the way I do, who sees beauty in rare things ages. Just numbers. I wanted to believe her sitting there under the stars, her hands warm on mine. It almost seemed possible. I don't know how to do this. I admit it do. Would any of this be with a woman, be with someone your age? Trust that this isn't just curiosity or rebellion or whatever it is that makes young people chase older lovers. Eden's grip tightened. Look at me. I did. Her eyes were serious, determined. This isn't curiosity. This isn't rebellion. This is me falling for an extraordinary woman who happens to be older than I am. If you can't handle that, tell me now. My throat felt tight. What if I hurt you? What if you don't? She kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt something shift inside me, all those years of thinking I was broken. That something was wrong with me for never feeling right with men, for always wondering what I was missing. I wasn't missing anything. I was just looking in the wrong place when we finally pulled apart. Eden rested her forehead against mine. Stay. Tonight, she said softly. It wasn't really a question, and we both knew I'd say yes. 3 weeks later, Eden invited me to Napa Valley for a wine country weekend retreat. It's an exclusive tasting event. She said, her voice casual, over the phone. Industry professionals only thought you might enjoy it. But we both knew it wasn't about the wine anymore. The drive up was tense with anticipation. Eden had booked us separate rooms at a boutique hotel, maintaining the pretense of professional colleagues. Even though we'd been kissing goodnight every Saturday for weeks, I kept stealing glances at her profile as she drove, watching her hands on the steering wheel, remembering how they felt in my hair. The retreat was everything she'd promised: exceptional wines, brilliant winemakers, conversations that challenged and inspired. But I found myself distracted, hyper-aware of Eden's presence beside me throughout the day's events. "You're quiet tonight," she said as we walked back from dinner, just thinking about how every time she laughed at someone else's conversation, I felt jealous about how watching her taste wine was becoming an exercise in barely controlled desire, about how completely out of my depth I felt about whether I'm making a fool of myself. Eden stopped walking, turning to face me under a street lamp. "Why would you think that?" "Because I'm falling for someone half my age and I have no idea what I'm doing." "You're not falling," Eden said quietly. "You've already fallen, so have I." The admission hung between us like a challenge. We were standing in the middle of a quiet street, wine country hills rolling away in the moonlight, and suddenly nothing else existed except the space between our bodies. "Tedden, come back to my room." It wasn't really a question, and we both knew I'd say yes. Her hotel room was elegant, understated, with French doors opening onto a private balcony overlooking the vineyards. Eden poured wine from a bottle she'd brought from the day's tastings, but neither of us touched our glasses. I've never done this before. I set the admission, coming out smaller than I intended. Been with a woman, been with someone who matters. Eden moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "You matter to me too." When she kissed me this time, it felt different, hungrier, more certain. I kissed her back with weeks of pent-up desire, my hands finding the soft cotton of her dress, the warm skin beneath. We moved to the bed, slowly learning each other through touch and whispered encouragement. Eden was patient, generous, teaching me things about my own body I'd never known. When she moved against me, when her mouth found sensitive places that made me gasp, I understood finally what I'd been missing all those years later. Lying tangled in sheets that smelled like her perfume, I traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "This changes everything," I whispered. "Does it have to be a bad thing?" I don't No, I've spent my whole life being careful, being appropriate. This feels like jumping off a cliff. Eden turned in my arms, her green eyes. Serious in the dim light, sometimes jumping is the only way to learn you can fly. What if I crash instead then? I'll catch you, the certainty in her voice broke something open. Inside me, I kissed her again, tasting promise and possibility on her lips. I love you. Eden said against my mouth, the words slipping out like they'd been waiting. My breath caught Eden. You don't have to say it back, not yet. But I needed you to know. I looked at her face, flushed and beautiful in the moonlight, streaming through the windows. 27 years separated us, but lying there, I couldn't remember why that had ever mattered. I love. You too, I whispered. Her smile was radiant, transforming her face into something that made my chest tight with emotion. So what now? I asked. Now we figure out how to make this work in the real world, your world, my world. They're pretty different then. We'll make a new world. She said it like it was simple, like love could overcome age differences and social expectations and my own. Deep-seated fears about finally being myself. Maybe it could. Margaret showed up on a Tuesday morning claiming she was there to help. I heard about your new romance, she said, settling into my kitchen like she belonged there with the young vineyard owner. I froze coffee cup halfway to my lips. Margaret and I had been friends for 15 years, ever since we'd worked together at Sabby's wine department. She was the only person I'd told about Eden. What about it? Nothing wrong with a little fun. Rachel, but mixing business with pleasure can be dangerous. Her smile felt wrong somehow, too bright, too knowing. Eden invited me to speak at her industry conference next month. Margaret continued as the renowned sommelier Rachel Watson. My blood went cold. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't I mention I've been using your credentials for freelance consulting work? Your reputation opens doors, darling. Don't worry, I split the fees 50-50 as you. Margaret laughed, a sound that suddenly seemed foreign. Come on, Rachel, you're too content playing house with your little girlfriend to pursue real opportunities. Someone should benefit from all that expertise. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. You've been impersonating me. Impersonating is such an ugly word. I prefer representing your interests. Hartwell's been so focused on your weekend trips to wine country, they barely notice when you're actually working anymore. Margaret, this is fraud. This is survival. Do you know how hard it is for women our age to get consulting work? Your name opens doors that stay locked for. Margaret Sullivan. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. My missed calls from potential clients' projects I'd supposedly declined that I'd never heard about. Margaret had been systematically inserting herself into my professional life. How long? I whispered. 6 months, maybe 7. Time flies when you're busy. My hands shook as I set down the coffee cup. You have to stop now, or what you'll tell people. Who do you think they'll believe? Rachel, the respected sommelier who's suddenly spending all her time with a woman young enough to be her daughter or her longtime friend and colleague who's been picking up the pieces. The threat was clear, wrapped in mock concern. Besides, Margaret continued, I've already confirmed your attendance at Eden's conference. Wouldn't want to disappoint your little girlfriend by backing out. Now she'll know it's not me. Margaret's smile turned predatory. Will she? I've studied your tasting notes, your speech patterns, your professional opinions. I know your work better than you do at this point. Why are you doing this? Because I deserve better than living in your shadow, because watching you throw away your career for some midlife crisis romance is painful, because I can do your job just as well as you can. The Margaret I thought I knew disappeared, completely replaced by someone calculating and cold. I won't let you do this to Eden. You can't stop me. I've already been introduced to her business partners as Rachel Watson. Your reputation, your expertise, but someone who actually shows up to work instead of playing house in wine country. She stood, smoothing her skirt like she just finished a pleasant social visit. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Rachel, enjoy your little romance while it lasts. Just stay out of my way. Professionally. After she left, I sat in my empty kitchen, feeling like the walls were closing in everything I built, every relationship I'd cultivated in the wine world. Margaret, had been systematically poisoning while wearing my face. I called Eden immediately. Something's wrong, I said. When she answered, what happened, Margaret? My friend Margaret. She's been Eden. She's been using my name. My credentials, she's speaking at your conference as me, silence stretched between us, Tedden. How long has this been going on? Months? I had no idea. Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you been lying to me about anything else? The question hit like a physical blow. What? No, Eden, I would never, because Margaret called my office yesterday. She said she was concerned about me, about us, said you'd been struggling with reliability issues, that your relationship with me was affecting your professional judgment. My world tilted. Margaret hadn't just stolen my identity. She poisoned the one relationship that mattered most. You have to believe me, I whispered. I had no idea what she was doing. I want to, but right now, I don't know what to believe. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in my quiet kitchen, watching my wife disintegrate around me. Eden didn't return my calls for 3 days. When she finally showed up at my apartment, her face was a mask of controlled fury. I hired a private investigator, she said without preamble, to look into Margaret's claims about you. My stomach dropped. Eden, I can explain. Can you explain why Margaret has been billing clients under your name for 8 months? Can you explain why she's been introduced to half of Napa Valley's wine industry as the real Rachel Watson? That's what I've been trying to tell you. She's been impersonating me. Or are you impersonating her? The question hit like a slap. What? Eden pulled out a folder thick with documents. Margaret Sullivan graduated summa cum laude from UC Davis with a degree in enology, worked at Sibby's for 12 years before going freelance, published articles in Wine Spectator under the name Mr. Watson. My mouth went dry. That's impossible. Is it because, according to these records, Margaret has been the real expert all along? You've just been taking credit for her work, Eden. You can't believe that. I don't know what to believe anymore. Her voice cracked slightly. The woman I thought I was falling for, the brilliant wine connoisseur who swept me off my feet, might not even exist. I am that woman. Are you? Because Margaret presented a very convincing case to my business partners yesterday. She knew details about wines we'd never discussed, had insights about my family's vineyard that impressed everyone. She was everything I thought you were, but more professional, more reliable. The betrayal cut deep. Margaret had done more than steal my identity. She'd stolen my relationship. What did she tell them? About us. Eden's face hardened. That you'd been using our personal relationship to gain access to proprietary information about Griffin Vineyards, that your sudden interest in me was professionally motivated. That's a lie, is it? Because from where I'm standing, this whole thing looks like an elaborate con. Older woman, younger Mark, romantic manipulation to still trade secrets. You know, that's not true. You know, what we have is real due. Because the Rachel Watson who's been consulting for Napa Valley's top vineyards for the past 8 months is articulate, professional, and reliable. The Rachel Watson standing in front of me is someone I apparently don't know at all. I sank into a chair, feeling everything I built with her crumbling. What can I do to prove it to you? I don't think you can. Margaret showed me documentation going back years, award certificates, client testimonials. Either she's the most elaborate fraud in wine industry history, or you are, and you believe her. Eden's silence was answer enough, the investigator confirmed. Margaret's credentials, she said finally. Her education, her work history, her expertise, everything checks out. What about mine? Yours are vaguer, harder to verify. Like someone built a false identity carefully over time. I laughed bitterly. She's good. Better than I gave her credit for. Rachel, it's fine, I get it. She's younger, more professional, doesn't come with the complications of a messy late life. Sexual awakening, she's the safer choice. That's not what this is about, isn't it? I stood facing her. You met someone who challenged everything you thought you wanted. Someone older, complicated, figuring out who she was at 59. That's terrifying for someone like you, someone like me, someone who's had everything mapped out since childhood. Someone who inherited success instead of fighting for it. Eden's eyes flashed. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're looking for an excuse to run Margaret just-handed. You, the perfect one, that's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but you've already made your choice. Margaret gets the professional respect. I get the romantic blame. Very convenient. Eden moved toward the door, then stopped. I wanted this to be real. It was real as real, but you're too scared to believe it. She reached for the handle, then turned back one more time. Prove it. Prove what? Prove that you're who you say you are. Prove that. Margaret is the fraud, not you. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. I sat in my empty apartment surrounded by wine books and tasting notes, wondering how someone I trusted completely had managed to steal not just my career, but my chance at love. But Eden had given me one last opportunity. Prove it. I just had to figure out how. The answer came from my old boss's files. Richard had kept meticulous records at Hartwell. Every tasting note, every authentication, every wine review I'd ever written was documented in his personal archive. His widow had given me access years ago for a retrospective article I was writing. Margaret had made one crucial mistake. She claimed credit for work that predated our friendship. I spent 2 days digging through boxes in Richard's basement finding documentation that proved my expertise. Stretched back 20 years before I'd even met Margaret. Handwritten tasting notes in my recognizable script, signed certificates from wine courses. She'd never taken photographs of me at industry events she'd never attended, but more than proof I needed a platform. Eden's conference was in 3 days. Margaret would be there presenting as me to hundreds of industry professionals. I called David Hartwell directly. Rachel, haven't heard from you in weeks. Margaret said you were taking some personal time. David, I need you to listen carefully. Margaret has been impersonating me. Silence stretched between us. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. She's been using my credentials for freelance work, billing clients under my name, and now she's speaking at a major conference as me. Rachel, I've worked with you both for years. Margaret's always been your collaborator. Check the records. David, real records, not what Margaret's been feeding you. Compare handwriting, cross-reference dates. I can prove everything. 3 hours later, David called back. His voice was grim. How long has this been going on? At least 8 months, maybe longer. Jesus, Rachel, we need to handle this carefully. The legal implications alone. I need to be at that conference, David. I need to expose her publicly before she destroys any more relationships. I'll make some calls the drive to Griffin. Vineyards felt surreal. I hadn't been back since. Everything imploded. The autumn landscape looked the same, but everything felt different. Now I found Eden in the vineyard, kneeling among newly planted vines in an area I'd never seen before. Night blooming serious, she said, without looking up. Thought I'd try creating a garden where they might actually thrive. Ted in it. I know about Margaret. David Hartwell called this morning. I stopped walking. He did. Apparently, she's been using your identity for almost a year, billing clients, accepting speaking engagements, even receiving awards in your name. Eden stood brushing dirt from her knees. Her face was unreadable. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. You believed what the evidence showed you? I believed what? I wanted to believe that this was too good to be true, that someone like you couldn't really want someone like me. Ted and Margaret played into every insecurity I had about our age difference, about whether this was real. She made it easy to doubt everything. I moved closer but didn't touch her, and now I know I've been an idiot. Margaret spent months building a case against you, using information she'd gathered about us, about the vineyard, about my own fears. She always was good at reading people. Eden's laugh was bitter. She read me like an open book, told me exactly what I was afraid to hear, then positioned herself as the safe alternative. The conference is tomorrow. Should be there, presenting as me. Not anymore. I canceled her session this morning. I stared at her. You did, and invited you to speak instead. About authentication fraud in the wine industry seemed appropriate for the first time in weeks. I smiled. That's perfect. Rachel. Eden stepped closer. I don't just owe you an apology. I owe you the truth about why I believed her so quickly. What truth? I was scared, terrified, actually, of how much I wanted this, how much I wanted you. It felt too intense, too fast, too much, like everything I'd been afraid to hope for. Her voice broke slightly when Margaret offered me an out when she made doubt seem reasonable. I took it because being hurt by fraud felt safer than being hurt by love. I reached for her hands, finally closing the distance between us and now. I know that nothing about love is safe, but I'd rather risk everything with you than play it safe without you. When she kissed me, it tasted like coming home after a long, terrible journey, like forgiveness and possibility and second chances all wrapped. Together, I love you, I whispered against her lips, even after everything, especially after everything, you gave me a chance to prove who I really am. That's more than most people would do. Eden pulled back to look at me. So what happens now? Now we go to that conference together. Now I reclaim my identity and reputation. Now we figure out how to build something real. I liked the sound of that. She kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt the last pieces of doubt finally fall away. The conference was my redemption, standing before hundreds of industry professionals presenting evidence of Margaret's elaborate fraud felt like reclaiming my life. One fact at a time. Identity theft in our industry isn't just about stolen credentials, I told the audience. It's about stolen relationships, damaged trust, and the systematic destruction of careers built over decades. Margaret wasn't there. David had called security when she tried to enter the building. I'd heard she was facing criminal charges. But honestly, I didn't care about her anymore. She'd become irrelevant the moment Eden and I walked into that conference hall to gather questions. I asked as my presentation concluded. The response was overwhelming apologies from colleagues who'd been fooled, invitations to consult, offers of collaboration, but the only approval I cared about came from Eden, standing at the back of the room with pride written across her face. That evening we drove back to Griffin Vineyards in comfortable silence. The October air carried hints of the harvest, that rich, earthy smell of grapes reaching perfect ripeness. Hungry? Eden asked as we pulled into her driveway. Sving, she'd prepared everything. Earlier fresh bread, local cheese, a selection of wines. From her private reserve, we ate on the patio, where we'd shared our first real conversation, where I'd first admitted I was falling for her. Thank you, I said as she refilled my glass. For what? For giving me a chance to prove myself, for believing me when the evidence said otherwise, for forgiving me for doubting us. Eden reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Thank you for fighting. For us, for not giving up when everything looked hopeless. I couldn't give up. This is the first time in my life I felt completely myself, with me, with you, with us, with who I am when I'm with you. She brought my hand to her lips, pressing a soft kiss to my palm. I love who you are with me too. We moved inside as the evening grew cool. Eden's cottage was warm, welcoming, filled with the scent of wine and roses from her garden in the living room. She'd lit candles, creating an atmosphere that felt both romantic and sacred. I have something for you, she said, disappearing into her bedroom. She returned carrying a bottle I'd never seen before. The label was handwritten, elegant script on cream paper. Rachel's Reserve, 2023, a blend for new beginnings. I stared at the bottle, throat tight with emotion. You made this for me. Started blending it the week after we met. It needs to age for years before it's ready, but I wanted you to see it, to know that I was thinking long term, even then 10. She set the bottle aside and moved closer, her hands finding my face. I love you, Rachel Watson, not the wine expert, not the professional reputation, not the age or the experience or any of that. I love you, the woman who laughs at my terrible wine metaphors, who tastes life like it's something precious, who took a chance on love at 59. When she kissed me, it felt different than before, certain, committed, like a promise being made and accepted. Simultaneously, we moved to her bedroom, slowly rediscovering each other with the patience of people who knew they had time. Eden's touch was reverent, worshipful, like she was memorizing every response when she whispered my name. against my skin when her hands found places that made me arch against her. I felt completely claimed, completely desired. Later, when our breathing had steadied and the candles had burned lower, I traced patterns on her bare shoulder. I want to propose something. Eden said softly, "What kind of proposal?" "Business partnership, Watson Griffin Wine. Consulting your expertise, my connections, our combined reputation." I propped myself up on my elbow, studying her face in the dim light. "Are you serious, dead serious? Do you know how many vineyards are struggling with authentication issues? How many need expert consultation on aging? Blending market positioning, it would mean working together every day. It would mean building something together, something that's ours." The idea was intoxicating. Not just the business opportunity, but the future it represented, waking up beside her, working side by side, growing old together in wine. "Country, yes," I said without hesitation. "Yes to the partnership, yes to everything. The business, the future, the crazy idea that we can make this work, despite everyone who thinks we're wrong for each other." Eden's smile was brilliant, transforming her face into something that made my chest tighten with love. "I want to celebrate," she said, reaching for me again. How like this she kissed me deeply, and I tasted promise and possibility on her lips. Tomorrow, we could start planning the business, filing paperwork. Announcing our partnership to the world tonight was just us, just this moment. Just the extraordinary feeling of being completely authentically myself with someone who loved every part of that self. "I love you," I whispered as she moved against me. "I love you too, always, always." The words settled into my heart like wine into oak, something that would only grow richer and more complex with time. 1 year later, I stood in the Aurora Botanical Gardens holding a bottle of our first commercial release. Watson Griffin Consulting had exceeded every expectation, bringing in clients from across California and beyond. But tonight wasn't about business. Tonight was about coming full circle. It's about to bloom. Eden said, checking her watch. The queen of the night was preparing for its annual spectacle. The same flower that had brought us together, perfect timing. I murmured, uncoring the wine. The garden was nearly empty, except for a few dedicated night owls scattered around the greenhouse. Eden and I had the prime viewing spot to ourselves, just like that first magical evening. "Remember what you said about this flower?" Eden asked, accepting her glass, "that it reminded you of a 985 Bordeaux complex, mysterious, worth waiting for. I was talking about you. You know, even then I laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet garden. Subtle, I've never been good at subtle. Ask anyone who knows me. The wine was exceptional we blended. It's specifically for tonight, a celebration vintage that wouldn't be ready for retail for another 2 years. Light, elegant, with notes that reminded me of vanilla and jasmine, like the flower beginning to unfurl before us." "Rachel," Eden said softly. When I turned, she was on one knee holding a small velvet box. My breath caught Eden. "What are you?" "I know we can't legally marry in every state, yet I know some people will never understand what we have, but I want to promise you everything I can promise my heart, my future, my commitment to building this beautiful, complicated life." Together, she opened the box, revealing 2 simple gold bands. "Will you wear my ring? Will you let me wear yours? Will you be my partner in everything that matters?" The flower bloomed fully as she spoke, white petals reflecting the garden lights. Like something from a fairy tale, the scent filled the air around us, intoxicating and perfect. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking yes to all of it. Eden slipped the ring onto my finger with hands that shook slightly. When I did the same for her, the metal caught the light and threw back tiny rainbows. "I love you, Mrs. Griffin," Eden said, standing to kiss me. "I love you too, Mrs. Watson Griffin." We kissed under the blooming, serious-tasting wine and promise, and the sweet certainty of a future we'd build together. When we broke apart, I realized I was crying. "Happy tears?" Eden asked, wiping my cheek with her thumb. "The happiest I never thought I'd have this at 59. I thought love was something that happened to other people. Love happens when it happens age. That's just timing very wise for someone so young. I had a good teacher. We sat on the garden bench, watching the flower reach full bloom. In a few hours, it would close again, not to open for another year, but we'd be here to see it, and the year after that, and every year after that. What are you thinking? Eden asked. About time, how I wasted so much of it being someone I wasn't, how grateful. I am that. I found you when I did. What if you'd found me sooner? I considered this. I wouldn't have been ready. I needed all those years of thinking I was broken to appreciate what it feels like to behold Eden leaned against my shoulder. Do you ever regret waiting so long to figure yourself out? Never, because figuring it out led me to you as we sat there in the moonlight rings. New on our fingers, watching the queen of the night display her rare beauty, I thought about unexpected love and perfect timing and the courage it takes to start over at any age. I was 60 now, Eden was 33. People still stared, sometimes still made assumptions about gold digging and desperation and what older women do when they can't accept growing old gracefully. Let them stare, let them assume I'd found my person, my partner, my perfect vintage. Love that had been worth the wait. The flower would close by dawn, but what had opened between us would only continue, growing, deepening, becoming more beautiful with time ready to go home. Eden asked as the garden began emptying, with you always? We walked hand in hand toward the parking lot, our shadows long in the garden lights, our future stretching out before us, like rows of grapevines reaching toward the horizon. Some stories end, others just begin.